So this morning, we have a reading, and we will introduce ourselves. But after the dramatic reading is over, we're going to take a moment to pause and contemplate what we've heard in that reading while Linda plays a little something for us on the organ. So just take a moment of silence after the dramatic reading is over.
I'm voicing the part of St. Peter. In the beginning, we thought we knew everything. We thought a new age was dawning, that everything was about to change. We thought we knew who he was, what he intended to do, what he could do for us, what we would do for him. In the beginning, we were so full of hope and enthusiasm for God, who was making all things possible and new.
I am Mary Magdalene. In the beginning, I thought I had nothing to offer. I knew my place in the world or out of it, since no one would come near me. I thought things would always go on the way they had been. I heard men talking about messiahs and revolution, but that had nothing to do with me. In the beginning, I was nothing, empty of everything except shame.
A Pharisee. In the beginning, we weren't that worried. Sure, there were rumors about the peasant wonder worker and his ragtag band of followers, but prophets and healers are a shekel a dozen. This man wasn't connected to anyone important. He was a minor nuisance, someone to keep an eye on, but no one to get worked up about. In the beginning, he didn't even warrant a mention in the council's minutes.
I'm the Roman soldier. In the beginning, I was glad to be assigned to Jerusalem. Pretty far from home, but a big enough city to see a little action now and then. Not that I wanted people to get hurt, mind you, but festival crowd control was a lot more interesting than enforcing tax collection. The Jews were okay, mostly. A few troublemakers among them, like anywhere, but they'd already risen up and been put down before I got there. In the beginning, I figured it'd be an easy job.
This is Judas Iscariot. In the beginning, I thought we were all on the same side. Or maybe I thought I could be on his side. It was so exciting being part of the cause, the movement, the revolution. Of course, that was just in the beginning.
I had never walked more than 5 miles from the town where I was born, where my father was born, and his father, and so on. I had a good life out on the lake, no guarantees, of course, and plenty of weeks when the nets weren't full enough. But I knew who I was and what I was doing. It was enough for me. Until he came, and once he started talking about fishing for people and the kingdom of God that was breaking forth in our midst, about how the order of the world wasn't necessarily a sign of who God cared about the most or how it would always be, I knew I could not go back.
I had never been a part of anything before. You probably don't know what it's like to be trapped inside your own head, your own skin, your own demon-tangled spirit, that you barely even notice what others say or do or expect. But you do notice that you're alone. My parents did the best they could to keep me safe, to keep me from hurting myself or from being targeted by those who thought I would curse them somehow to be like me. But I was always alone. And then he came, and I can't explain it, but the voices, the buzzing, the circling died down. And I was clear, and he invited me to follow him, and I knew I couldn't go back.
It all changed when he went up on that mountain. Peter and James and John were the only ones who knew what happened up there, and they'd never give me a straight answer about it. It was about that time that he started talking about death, his death, and how before it was all over he would suffer and be killed for the sake of the reign of God. I hated hearing it. We all did. But when we tried to convince him that we could keep him safe from those who threatened him and hated his popularity, he told us that safety wasn't really the point. We were hearing plenty of rumors by then about what happened to his cousin John, and that the Pharisees and the chief priests were worried about how the Romans would react if people got riled up during the Passover festival. But there was no changing his mind. We were going to Jerusalem no matter what.
It all changed when they started moving towards Jerusalem. Of course, by then we'd had plenty of time to get concerned that Nazareans started attracting attention, not just among the hopeless, the lowly, the needy, but the Romans started hearing about him. And Herod had been monitoring him too, ever since that whole John the Baptist debacle. We'd confronted him before, but it wasn't his first rodeo, if you'll pardon the expression. We had challenged his teachings, trying to show the people that he was just another charlatan out for his own gain. Unfortunately for us, he was extremely quick on his feet, and we usually ended up looking more foolish than he. It was so infuriating. And he seemed completely oblivious to the possibility of what the Romans might do if that crowd of his got a little too carried away and started rioting. So this time, we had a plan. We would keep the peace for the sake of the people, no matter what the cost.
The same things happen every year. The same people show up for the same ritual celebrations, telling the same stories they've always told. Honestly, I think it'd get boring. At least at home, there are dozens of gods to choose from. A million ways to pay homage and make up for whatever stupid things you've done. But it all changed that Sunday when Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, was entering the city with all his cavalry on the west side of Jerusalem. And this nobody from the northern backwaters rode a donkey into town from the east. Guess which parade I got to cover? Not the big, important, fancy one, that's for sure. But there was something about this guy and the people who lined the roads to see him, from what I overheard. I guess there was some prophecy in their sacred scrolls about a king who would enter the city like that. A king who would bring peace to the nations. Kind of impressive, I guess. Not that you'd catch me waiting by roadsides to cheer for the latest celebrity. I'm no fanatic, no fool. You know, in spite of all the hoopla, I got the impression he wasn't usually the kind of guy that makes a big show. He seems kind of quiet, actually. Whatever. This guy was no king, but he was plenty popular, and with 100,000 pilgrims either already in town or on their way, that was enough reason to keep an eye on him. I had a job to do, no matter the cost.
When we came into Jerusalem, I saw that the people were with us, and as scared as I was, I wanted to weep with joy.
When we came into Jerusalem, I didn't really understand what was happening. We were there for Passover, but he seemed to want to make a statement too. It was kind of amazing, all those people cheering, laying down the branches and cloaks in the road, like we were conquerors, like royalty, like we were somebody, and we had finally arrived.
It was only later that we realized he'd been saying goodbye all along. He was always a couple of steps ahead of us. He just seemed to understand the way the world worked, and he knew he'd reached the end of the road.
In the beginning, there were actually times when I found myself thinking, What if he is right? What if he is right? What if the law and the prophets are more about showing the loving kindness of God to all people than about setting Israel apart as a holy and separate people, kept pure through blind obedience to every detail of the law? What if God cares less about what is clean or unclean than whether the heart is dedicated to true love? But that way, chaos lies. What kind of religion, what kind of people can do away with the law? If you start to ask questions like that, soon enough, you've unraveled everything. No. He started out on the wrong path, and now he's reached the end of the road.
It was only later that I wondered if all those people with their cloaks and palm branches knew something I didn't know, saw something I didn't see. I mean, the rest of that week went from bad to worse, and by Friday he looked anything but kingly. Still, there was something about him that made me wonder, what was he giving his life to? Was it worth it, all that suffering? And why did those women and fools keep following him to the bitter end of that awful road?
In the beginning, it was easy enough to follow. We had such hope. He was so inspiring. But it went downhill so fast. And when I saw which way the wind was blowing, I didn't want to be caught looking like a fool. I wasn't going to be the last man standing when he came to the end of that road. I wish it could have turned out differently. I wish I could have had more faith, or gotten out faster, or had the strength to see it through. As soon as I'd done it, I knew it was the wrong thing, but it was too late. There was no going back. I couldn't bear to face him, not ever again.
It was only later that I realized I was no different from the rest. No different from the crowd that cried Hosanna on Sunday and Crucify on Friday. No different from the Pharisees who were watching out for themselves and the only way of thinking about the world they could imagine. No different from the Romans who knew what they wanted: orderly peace, unquestioned power, and didn't much care what it took to achieve or maintain it. I was no different even from Judas, even though we were all shocked and disgusted that he would betray us all just for money. But what could I say? I couldn't even tell the truth about who I was, or where I was from, or what I was doing there, or what I had given my life to. All I wanted to do that Friday and Sabbath day was run away and hide.
In the beginning, it all seemed so clear and important. I had never been part of anything, and I found my life with him, with all of them, traveling around together, seeing the way of God come alive in our midst. But it all changed so quickly. We went to Jerusalem for Passover, remembering the night long ago when our children were spared and our oppressors suffered deeply. But the angel of death did not spare him. Now we are lost. We have come to the end of the road, and he's gone. He seemed so pure and so holy, so full of love and life. I don't think any of us believed it could possibly end this way. Now there is nothing to do but wait until the Sabbath is over and we can dress the body and someone figures out what to do next. There are so many things we thought we knew, but now we have to rethink everything.